I'm with renowned world traveler and author Nathan Everett. And I'll let him introduce himself and give a little bit of his background, and then we're going to talk about him and his books and his travels and some of his craziness.
Hey, Mark, welcome to fabulous Las Vegas. This is where I live in the wintertime. Um, I haven't always lived in Vegas, and in the summertime, I am a vagabond for the most part, and I just travel around. So um, that's been kind of the direction that I've been heading for quite some time, and they call it when they refer to me, they say that I am a peripatetic author.
Okay, peripatetic. You've got to explain that word.
Traveling. It just means that I travel around.
Thank goodness you don't write like you just spoke, or no one would understand your books.
Well, that happens occasionally too. I try to get a word or two into every one of them that people have to look up.
Huh. Well, that's good to expand their vocabularies.
Mm.
Yeah. So, hey, what got you into writing? What were you before you became a writer, and how did writing happen?
I was an infant. Um, the when I started writing, it was a let me think here now, fourth grade, I think. My friends and I would go out, and we were really into stories and play acting, and we created elaborate scenarios and about adventures none of us ever actually had. And in fourth grade, I actually started my first novel. It was called Princes and Princesses and featured my best friend and two girls in our class we thought were pretty cool. And unfortunately, I kept getting confused about the number of S's in princes and princess and princesses. And so wherever that occurred in my manuscript, I just drew a line and left it blank. And I've been a writer ever since.
Well, when did you become what you would call a professional writer?
Well, I decided that this was more than just a hobby. It was kind of my calling back in 1979 when I looked at it and said, okay, I'm going to actually put the effort in to write a book. And I started off writing a book called A Touch of Magic. And if you look at the photos of Greece, as a matter of fact, I would say that a lot of A Touch of Magic was written about Greece and England and the various mythologies that take place there. So I've sat down, wrote my novel, 120 pages. Boy, I tell you, I was so proud of that. And I took it to a friend to have him read it and comment on it. It took him about an hour to get through the whole thing. And he looked at me, handed me the manuscript, and he says, "Wow, that's really freeze dried." And I'm going, "What? What do you mean?" He says, "Well, if you added some hot water to it, it'd be a whole novel." And I was really struck by that. I was walking home, and this was in Minneapolis in the middle of winter, and I was about 2.5 miles. I did a lot of walking in those days, and I was going over his comments and what all the characters were doing and what needed to be covered and that sort of thing, when I heard a voice say, "If you'd just be quiet for a minute, I'd tell you how things actually are." And it was so real and so close that I almost fell off the curb looking around to see where this person was. And it's the first time that a character actually started talking to me in my head.
Now, was this in your Props Master series? Was that
this is the Props Master series? The first one that I started was A Touch of Magic. But after I started listening to the character J. Wesley Allen, I started writing a whole new background book that I called Behind the Ivory Veil. I wrote another book in this series called Ritual Reality. And that one I took through to publication. And then I went back and rewrote and finished Behind the Ivory Veil. And then 3, 4 years later, is 2020 by the time I got back to it, I rewrote and published A Touch of Magic. In the picture, you see me posed at a place in Greece called the Matira. And these are huge pillars of rock that rise up out of the plains of Thessalonia in Greece. And it was an incredible experience because this is where a good bit of the book was set, even though I wrote it 40 years before I actually ever got to visit the Matira. And I tell you, just going there and seeing how well I managed to match the descriptions and that sort of thing was really a phenomenal experience.
So did you also send a picture of the Parthenon? Did you ever set part of it there too?
Well, it was kind of peripheral, but I did visit the Parthenon on that same trip back in 2017, and I was very, very moved. It was, they say, well, where's the rest of it? And the answer is in the British Museum. But it was really quite an experience to sit there in front of the Parthenon and visualize the mythology that went through it. Was the whole series of books was very mythology based, and the
So
idea
that was your
was
first series.
that was the first thing that I
the
actually
thing is,
wrote.
so you've only written 3 books. That's a loaded question, I know.
Well, as you know from the piece, I sent you 72 photos of covers. Actually, there are 74 books in my background that are published under 2 different names: Nathan Everett for my more literary works, and Devon Layne for my more erotic romance.
So which are you more known for, the romantic or erotic romance, or
I'd have
for
to say, yeah, I'd have to say that I have a much wider readership of the erotic romance and adventure, of which I have 60 titles. And although the literary fiction has that I have 14 titles of literary mystery thriller, that kind of thing, are popular, just not as popular as erotica. It sells better.
So is that why you sent all the pictures of beautiful ladies that you're with? It looked like you were showing off your girlfriends.
Well, yeah, it's Mark, I'm an old man. It's been a lot of years since I was the age of most of the people that I write about. And so every once in a while, you need a little refresher about what those people were experiencing. And I have always found wherever I was traveling that there were delightful women who would volunteer to be a model for one of my characters. It's what I refer to as my primary research, is actually getting in touch with some of these women who will go through. One of my major editors, as a matter of fact, is a woman who critiques every little bit of the erotica aspect as well as the rest of the storyline.
That's interesting. You have women inspire you. You send a picture of you and the author Angus Vieira with a woman who you call Thursday. And he's also inspired by the women in his life. But you've also helped Angus in a way. You're also a publisher. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I started a publishing company with well, I think my first publishing company that I started was back in the early 80s, where I was publishing primarily um, trade journals and marketing materials and that sort of thing. But I got a couple of partners while I was working at Microsoft, and the three of us created our own publishing company that we called Longtail Press. And it had a good concept. It was about 10 years ahead of its time. And people are much more into that, the way that we were approaching things then. But I acquired the assets of Longtail Press and changed the name to Elder Road Books and kept publishing materials for, a dozen or 15 other authors. Then I got old and I decided, I just hate this whole accounting thing and putting royalty checks out and everything else. So I ended up turning everything back over to the authors that I had published so that they could get it out on their own. And the only thing I do now is edit and lay out books for other authors to produce on their own. And that's
So
what brought me to Angus. Angus is a great guy, actually introduced to me by you. And he's written three mysteries in which he is the leading character and the detective. They're all fun. They all involve women who are either strippers or prostitutes or other entertainers in the adult industry. And he has created this environment of how he and a rabbit and a couple of women of the night are able to go out and solve a whole lot of mysteries. And I loved designing, working on his books, and met him in Portland at one of the strip clubs that he frequents, along with Thursday, one of his favorites. And we shot that little promo photo.
one of the benefits of your job, you know.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
so you've gone to adult conferences as an erotic author, and then you could meet people like Angus at strip clubs to talk about his books and to meet the characters in them in a way, also for more inspiration.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
you've been single and never had any kids. I'm joking. I know better,
Uh,
but you were a family man before you became a wild debauchery ridden guy in your older years.
yeah, that's one of the things. Um, I had not written any erotica. Um, well, there was one time that I wrote some erotic stuff in about 95 or 96, and I was so embarrassed by it that I put it under a locked password on my computer. And I don't write that kind of thing. I write serious literature. And then in 2000, must have been the end of 2011, I was writing one of my Seattle noir mysteries. And those mysteries are always, well, the detective gets the case solved, but it's never a happy ending. And I was particularly depressed by the ending of For Money or Mayhem of the Seattle Noir series. And then very shortly after I wrote those final words, I found out that my marriage of 25 years was winding down to an end. And I was really shocked by that. Um, and I decided that I needed to write something with a happy ending. What has a happier ending than erotica? Uh, the so It wasn't long thereafter about the dawning of 2013 that I said, I am actually an author now, and this is what I do, and I could do it from anywhere. So why am I doing it from a basement in Bellevue? And that's when I bought my truck, my travel trailer, and I've been on the road for 12 years.
You ever have any second thoughts about that, or has it been a great thing to be on the road and experiencing all the locations like Winslow and Sun Meadow and the
Oh,
Oregon Ranch and all of these places that you've gone to for inspiration and to live?
yeah. It's one of the great things that I discovered was that in those past 12 years since I've been on the road, I have made several circuits all the way around the country. I have been in 47 states, three Canadian provinces, and then one winter I stored the truck and trailer, and after spending a few months in Hawaii, I said, well, this is halfway to Japan. I'm just going to keep going, and went to 16 more countries. So that this year, this summer, I hope that I will add those last three states, Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire, to my list of having accomplished that. Um, but the real thing is that it's always been the journey that was the most exciting.
Thailand was one place you went to on your round the world trip,
That's right.
and it seemed like you enjoyed northern Thailand quite a bit, the
Oh, I
Chiang Mai
did.
region.
Yeah, love Chiang Mai. And it's funny that I was working on a book at that time as well. Um, and it was one of the Seattle Noir series for Mayhem or Madness. And I set it in a good portion of it in that enchanted bungalows in Chiang Mai. And a great time meeting people. Even we played a game with the guests at the resort there. It's a lovely little place, and I spent a month there just eating up the environment and the food, including actually going next door and taking cooking lessons at the little Thai kitchen. And I got one of the women who were at the resort. We were playing a game one night with, about a dozen of us. And
Now, Nathan, you're an erotic author and you're playing games with women in Thailand. This sounds really interesting.
well,
Was it some sort of a game that you can't describe in detail, or was it something more
I
mundane?
could describe it in detail, but it's not that interesting. It was a game in which you had a dare or a likelihood. And so the question that was posed to this woman and I, and people were just taking turns around the table, and the question was, uh, how likely would you be to, on a scale of 1 to 10, to pose in your bikini in the pool for his cover? And we each had to shout out our answer, what number the likelihood was. Well, if we matched numbers, she had to do it. And by golly, we matched. And she stood up, stripped off all of her outer clothes to her bikini, and dove in the pool and just laid face down in the pool as the body for the novel.
Did you use the picture?
No, it wasn't. Unfortunately, it was at night and it wasn't that great a photograph, but it was a fun time getting it.
Okay, well, I bet. No, hey, I'm supposed to ask you about your bucket list, and
Yeah.
you have.
Well, I actually wrote a uh, an old man's bucket list as one of my um, oh, what do you want to call it? One of my short stories for the serial site that I work on. And I actually have extracted a few things from that. Um, so the number one thing that's still on my bucket list is I want to write the story that brings the world to a moment's pause at the brink of disaster so that it has time to turn its head and choose to live.
Hmm.
I want to
Hmm.
memorize a wonderful woman's orgasm. I want to be able to describe exactly what it looked and felt like in words that would make the experience come back again. And I want to serve coffee each morning to a woman who considers the first cup foreplay. I'd like to see, and you'll notice among my books and that sort of thing, a Nathan Everett title is called The Gutenberg Rubric. And I have traveled in several places and have seen many copies of the Gutenberg Bible. I'd like to see every extant copy of the Gutenberg Bible and hold one in my hands and weep for the beauty of the printed word that has been lost to us.
Hmm.
And then I want to sit in the summer rain with my face tilted toward the sky until the tears have been washed away forever. When it's all over, I want to die in the arms of the only woman who has ever loved me without fail and for whom my love has never faltered. I want to know that no matter what my failings have been, she's able to survive in the world and thrive in her life. I want to die knowing that she will be a much better person than her father ever hoped to be.
Hmm.
In that knowledge, the instant before I die, I want to know that I've left the world a better place than I found it. And you've got a picture there of my daughter and I at her wedding 3 years ago. And I could never be prouder of any person than I am of that young woman.
I remember you telling me about an adventure with her too. You took her out in the desert when you were camping in Arizona near the California border and went on some horrible road that scratched your
Oh,
truck and was
oh,
barely passable. And she was out there. What was she guiding you on this road?
oh, yeah. We actually this place, uh, and I'm sorry I can't recall the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a wilderness area right on the border of Arizona and Mexico. And you have to cross a Marine base in order to get to it. We had to actually watch videos and pass a test before we were given a permit to go out there. And it was very funny because the videos and the test were basically on all the ways you can die out here. It was and it was desolate. The entire day that we were out, we saw one border patrol go past, and that was the only other person that we saw the entire day. And we took a route that was listed on the map of the place and went up over what they called, I think, Christmas Pass. And it was so narrow that I was afraid that I would lose the truck over the edge of the cliff. And so Quinn got out of the truck and waved me forward from in front, giving me directions to make sure that I stayed on this narrow little track. And when we crossed the pass, then we had to go out to the what passed for a road, which was also so narrow and had so many juniper that literally brushed both sides of the truck and left it a scratched up mess by the time we finally got back to the freeway.
And you were probably never so happy to see a freeway.
Well, it was pretty exciting to get on the road, and I want to say also that when I got back and I took the trip up to Seattle where she lives, she was so happy that I had taken her on that trip and so sad about my truck that she actually bought a polishing buffer and and polish and buffed all of the scratches out of my truck.
Wow. That probably took her a few hours to do.
Several hours, and all I
Mm.
did while she was doing it was um, sit and talk to her.
Wow. 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 Well, you know, yeah, you've written 72 titles, but actually 74 books because some of them have multi parts, as I understand it. But have you ever gotten any trouble or raised any
Oh,
controversy with some of your books?
well, it happens, and it happens because even in erotica, I feel that I have a moral obligation. And that obligation is to be fair, be honest, and treat things the way that they really are. And so there have been times, for example, I wrote a series of books about a depressed art student. And if you read a bunch of erotica, you find out that typically depression is cured when the hero has sex, and then everything's just fine. And that's not the way it works. And I went through 6 books, and that kid, even with a happy family life, still fought depression. So I think one of the most notable about things that raise a controversy, though, are when I was writing the transmogrification of Jacob Hopkins. I was I started writing. I serialized my stories so that um, users or readers get a chapter every 3 days or so. And I was working on a storyline that I called the transmogrification of Jacob Hopkins. And that was a story about an old man who becomes a young man again. And but he misses most of the tropes of usual do-overs and is discovering that he is um, having to deal with life as a youth today, not back when he was a kid. So I was about 40, 42 chapters into this story and had amassed a really good following, like getting 10,000 downloads a chapter, which is pretty darn good in that area. And in that 42nd, 43rd chapter, someplace, I revealed that one of the main character's girlfriends was trans. And that day, I lost a third of my readership, literally down to about 6,500 instead of 10,000. And the amount of venom that was spewed out at me in emails and comments and such was just unbelievable. Um, but I felt that it was a valid piece. Uh, Nobody realized that she wasn't a natural girl. She was trans, and she was in process of having the her operation. She was halfway through the entire conversion process, which we think, oh well, they just dressing up. No, that's not necessarily true. Um, so it was very good experience, all told. Even though I lost a lot of readership, I felt that it was absolutely necessary to give an honest and complete and faithful portrayal of this person.
Well, wow. 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 And we don't normally discuss politics or stuff like that. And I know you were just coming from a place of where this is the real world and this is stuff that happens, not
Yep,
trying to make a political statement, and you and I are both aware that when you make political statements, you tend to alienate, especially in today's world,
uh,
a lot of people. So we try to steer away from
unbelievable.
it. Yeah. to ask two other questions. And the first one is, how do people find your books?
Aha. Well, um, this is a good point right at the moment for me because I have a new book coming out on Friday this week.
That was my second question, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
okay. Well, I'm going to tell you how to get hold of them. All of my books are available as ebooks. And I'll give you all a little hint. One of the best places that you can go to buy adult-oriented ebooks is bookappy.com. And bookappy.com has me listed under both names as Devon Layne and as Nathan Everett. And one of the great things for authors about that is that they get a much higher percentage of the proceeds than they'd get from any of the big boys out there. If you, nothing against you if you decide that you have to get all of your books from Amazon, but it's not. Amazon doesn't care about the authors, so we don't get the profit from that. And probably 3/4 of my ebook sales now come from Bookappy.
How do you
Now,
spell that?
BOOKAPY.com.
Got it.
And of course, my books are available on Amazon and on Barnes and Noble and on Books A Million and most other sites. The books that are coming out on Friday mark a new endeavor for me. A lot of my books are also available in paperback, but not all of them. The advent of ebooks had a big effect on men reading erotica because they didn't have to sit with a paperback in their hand and a bodice ripper cover, letting everybody know what they were reading because it was just on their phone or just on their iPad or their Kindle or what have you. So male readership really skyrocketed at that time. Now,
are most of your readers males?
Oh, yes. Yeah, about 95%.
Okay.
And that comes from actual studies and surveys that I've done. So the thing is that a lot of my books aren't available as paperbacks. And as a vain author, I want them available as paperbacks because I want to see them on my bookshelf. So starting with Soulmates, releasing on Friday this week, Valentine's Day, I have released a new paperback version that I refer to as the Signature Collection and includes a digitally signed photograph and an interview and things that aren't found in the ebook in general, nicely laid out. And because it's for me, and I have already ordered my copy. I don't care if anybody else orders it or not. It's $25 though. And in case you are wondering about this industry, you got to understand that your bookseller takes 40% of that. And your producer, the printer, gets about another 30%. And so by the time that the money trickles down to me, I get about $6-7 out of that 25. So I'm not trying to gouge people.
So they can go to
Bookappy.
Bookappy. Okay. Bookappy.com and find all your books under your name or Devon Layne, which I'll have here in text and stuff for people. And you're going to keep writing, right? You're going to keep going. Yeah. You're going to keep traveling and writing. And what are your plans coming up? Where are you going to travel to? What's your next adventure?
Well, I'm thinking that this summer I will go out to Maine, and I haven't decided how I'm going to get there yet. I have several different routes as possibilities. One is pulling my trailer up and taking the Trans-Canada Highway all the way across Canada, and then coming back. That is a long, long trip, and I'm not sure that I'm up for it yet. But the alternative is that I just fly out to, say, Boston, rent a car for 3 or 4 weeks, and travel through New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine, and then fly back.
Hmm.
So it'll be one of those two things, I think.
Both would
Um,
be good. You
yeah, yeah. And the latter would be a little less stressful. It,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
I'm working on a new book right now. In fact, I was writing just before our meeting connected. That is called Forever Yours. It is about a young computer scientist who is developing variants on artificial intelligence. And it deals with, of course, all the people who he gathers around him and the relationships and that sort of thing, which are necessary, but also about his ethical situation of uh, how far do we go with artificial intelligence, and what
Hmm.
can we produce, and that sort of thing. It's really quite a challenge to write, and I'm having a good time with it.
Oh, wow. Well, I know you always have a good time writing. I think you write 6 hours a
Uh,
day at least, don't you?
Pretty much, pretty much. The uh, in fact, I seldom have only one project underway. I've got another one that I am kind of outlining at the moment, and another one that's sitting in the background waiting, and then of course the one that gets released on Friday. So,
Hmm. 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 Well, hey, is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we sign off? I want to thank you for being here and thank you for the interview. And you've been a good friend to me over the years. I need to mention that you've helped me as a publisher and you've helped my friends as a publisher, and with Angus and his books and Tony Majiram and his book. What's the title of his book?
um, the Tao of Samosa
Ram,
Ram,
Samosa Ram. Yeah, yeah.
yes,
The Tao of Samosa Ram. And that's a fantastic book. And Tony's a madman who is one of my
someplace in India at the
oh
moment.
he's in Gokarna right now in India, but he's lived in India and with little excursions, excuse me, to Thailand and to Japan and to Nepal for about 45 years. And he's
Mhm.
ridden a motorcycle there, which has been full of
Still riding it.
adventures. He's still riding it. And so I just would put in a little plug for Angus and for Tony too.
Yeah,
So,
good, good.
but
And your own books.
well, mine. I'm more focused on my screenplays. Everybody who reads my books likes them, all 10 people. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I have not marketed well like you.
I wrote a book a number of years ago called The Volunteer, and that's a Nathan Everett book. It's about a homeless man and how he became homeless, and his confidence that he'd only be homeless for a few days, and then over years and years and years, how he will always be homeless. And I
Hmm.
I felt that it was an important book to write because everybody says, "Oh, we have to solve the homeless problem by getting them houses," but there are many people out there who having a house wouldn't make a difference; they would still be homeless. Um, uh, there are many reasons for that, and that's what I explored. But when I released it, I believe all 12 people who will ever read the book bought it the first week it was out, and that's it.
Yeah, well, sometimes that happens, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it was important
uh,
for me to write it.
hey, Martin Scorsese made Boxcar Bertha, and that's one he and Paul Newman made a movie in which he was a Roman soldier, which he bought and will refuse to be released forever. It was so awful. It happens to everybody. And your book
Yep.
probably wasn't even off. But
Yeah.
hey, well, thank you very much. And
Thank you, Mark.
I
This was a lot
appreciate
of
it.
fun.
And if you gain some readers from this, I'm sure they'll appreciate this interview.
I
So
hope so. And drop me a line. Elder Road Books at outlook.com.
Yeah,
And
yeah, there you go. He's invited you to email him. And I did have an idea. I should mention before I go, ladies who are watching this interview, why, if you dare, read a few of Nathan's books and then send him notes on the female way of thinking about this book, the female way, and maybe he could write something from that perspective.
always interested.
Yeah, I mean, I know you'd be interested in that. You're very interested in females and like females. I know that. And, you know, why not get their perspective into it? Be interesting for you to write a book from that perspective.
Yes,
You
it
know,
would.
and
It would
I
be
think
fun.
some input for some of you, the female readers, could be really good in that respect. Just a thought, you know.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, hey, well, I'm out of here. Have a great time down there in Vegas. While I'm up here below zero every night up here in the
Ooh,
Pacific Northwest. I took
uh,
the dog a walk 25 degrees this morning just before sunrise. I know
oh,
you are not experiencing that.
no, it's 60 here at the moment. So,
well, I
and
won't.
sunny.
Okay, well, screw you. That's speaking of my dog. There it is. But
I hear him.
yeah, well, hey,
You
have a
take care,
great
man.
one. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye bye.